Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Straight Jacket White Rabbit. I'll be your host, Adam. Today, we're going to be talking about time slips. Areas in history where people have actually claimed to have slipped to a different time, either future or past. Most of these experiences seem to only last minutes or an hour, a couple hours at the most, some of which have claimed to last for days, weeks, months, or even years. Now, there are thousands of these reports, you guys, thousands and thousands of these reports throughout history of people seemingly not being where they were in history. Now, their locations don't change. Ironically, all the reported cases, the location of where the person is doesn't change. Just the when of that location, the time of that location is changed. Now, regardless of what you believe about time slips, you guys, I don't associate this with time travel, okay? I know technically, yes, it's time travel, but I associate time travel with some kind of technology manipulated on purpose to go to a specific point where you want to go. These are cracks. People don't necessarily choose where they're going. There have been famous ones all over the world, you guys. There have been people who've gone to ancient structures in Rome and claim to have seen the actual Art Deco and the artistry, the paintings and the murals on buildings where they haven't existed for hundreds and hundreds of years. And they describe them accurately, what these paintings and what these murals used to be on the ceilings of these chapels and on the walls of these places. There are famous stories going back to, all kinds of dates. One of the most popular was in 1911, I believe it was. Let me look. Pull this up real quick. Sorry about that. Yeah, 1911, you guys. Two women in France, Charlotte and Eleanor. Charlotte and Eleanor were walking outside of a very popular tourist place, a palace named the Petit Trianon. Now, as they were walking around the outside of the grounds, there was this little bridge that led into the courtyard. They entered over this bridge and into this beautiful, lush courtyard. And as they're walking through this courtyard, you guys, they claim to see a lot of men walking around in period garbed clothing. Period clothing, you guys. I'm talking the long heavy coats, blue and gray, the wigs, the boots, all of the clothing that you would expect to see many, many hundreds of years ago. Now, this being said, sorry about that. This being said, they also noticed a woman in the middle of the courtyard appearing to sketch or draw the actual palace. They didn't think a whole lot of it, and they walked around the courtyard area and the grounds where the flowers were and the hedges and the nice little areas. They thought nothing of it, and they continued their journey back over the bridge and walked around. They went around town. Later on, when they were describing what they had seen to some people, they were told that they didn't know what they were talking about, or that they were mistaken, that there was no bridge where they were talking about, and there certainly weren't any people that were supposed to be walking around in period clothing. The girls, obviously bothered by this on their trip, decided to go back and take another look at the location. So the girls go back to the location, and as they're walking around the perimeter to go towards the side that has the gardens on it, the courtyard, they noticed that the bridge that they crossed over was nowhere to be found. They couldn't find the bridge. They circled the entire property multiple times looking to try to find this bridge, and completely stumped, they returned back to their hotel room defeated. Now, I think it was months, I'm not 100% sure on this part, on the time frame. I believe it was months later, this was still bothering them, and they actually decided that they were going to look up plans for this bridge. Or, I'm sorry, not for the bridge, for the property. And the property plans show that there was a bridge exactly where they said that they had crossed over this bridge. The problem is this bridge was destroyed decades and decades and decades ago. It hasn't existed for quite a long time. Seeing this, the women got understandably shaken. As they're doing more and more research on this, they come across a portrait painting of Marie Antoinette. And both women swear up and down that the woman they saw drawing or sketching in the courtyard was Marie Antoinette. The problem with confirming these stories, you guys, is a lot of it is simply taking people as eyewitnesses at their word. People have not come back with photos or videos of these time slips that we know of that are accurate. So although there's no way to prove it, although she does have another witness with her, at least in this example, which is a good thing. The reason mainstream science won't accept this is because there's no concrete data. Well, the problem is there's no concrete data on a lot of things that exist, you guys. These people they're going through something that they believe is real. And I don't believe the doctors, the psychologists, and all these people who have come out later and said, oh, well, it was some kind of shared hallucination, or it was some kind of, hysteria, or any of that. Okay, these women both didn't have a breakdown and see the exact same thing of people wearing period clothes, people sketching, or the woman sketching in the courtyard, going over the same bridge. I mean, what sounds more absurd, that these two people had a linked experience, a hallucination, where they both saw and experienced and heard and felt and everything the same thing? I don't believe that. We all know our own government has been experimenting with time travel for a long time now. And some people believe that the experiments that people have done, as well as other time travel that maybe other species have done or us in the future have done, are creating a steadier flow of these time slips, which is why people believe they're increasing. There have been a marked uptick, and there are only about another 100 cases above where they used to be about 50 years ago. But it's 100 more cases each cycle that are getting reported. There are hundreds more than that used to be reported, and it's only getting worse. So are we experiencing some kind of side effect or an after effect of people who have already time traveled? Maybe the veil between reality and time and space is getting thinner because of time traveling itself. Or maybe there are just places and times in the world where it blurs the lines between time and reality, and multiple dimensions blurs to where you can go other places. People have long suspected that the Bermuda Triangle is one of these places. Planes go up and they're never seen again. People have also claimed in and around the Bermuda Triangle, people have numerous times claimed to see, no other word to describe it, but antique aircraft flying in the sky. Old biplane prop planes, things that just aren't normally seen. There's another man that I wanted to talk to you guys about. His name is Victor, you guys. Victor Goddard was an RAF British Royal Air Force pilot back in 1935. He went to his plane to take it up for a normal everyday mission, taking it out, training ops, and he takes his plane up in 1935. And he's out, nothing's going on, nothing unusual happens. And he goes through some clouds, some cloud cover. And as he's deciding to turn back to base, he turns back towards the base, and within minutes, he's realizing that things look slightly different than they did when he took off. And he can't quite put his finger on what's going on, so he continues on his way back to the base. What Victor Goddard did not know is that he was going to experience one of the most famous time slips in all of British history. And what happens next is actually kind of quite disturbing. So he flies his plane towards his base. And as he does, he flies over the outer base area where the hangars are. There are a dozen or more of these brightly yellow painted planes with a small little circle insignia on the back, on the tail, that he didn't recognize. And a bunch of men standing around that look like mechanics, only they were wearing blue jumpsuits which was odd to him because back in 1935, all of the RAF mechanics and Air Force crew and everyone, they were all wearing brown jumpsuits, brown jackets, brown jumpsuits, brown pants. This was the uniform. So he's confused about what he was seeing. He continued on to his runway and he lands his plane. Everything at his runway, by the time he lands, looks normal. All the planes look normal. The crew and all the RAF staff were all dressed in normal uniforms. So he kind of just shook it off, you guys. Decades later, after promotions and everything else, he comes to the slow realization that the planes that he saw are now being in use. Bright yellow, the circular patterns drawn on the tails, and the military has now changed the uniforms of the flight crew and mechanics to blue jumpsuits, which are the jumpsuits he saw these people on the ground working in during this time slip. He later wrote a book about this, you guys, and experiences, he details every experience he had from the moment he takes off till the moment he lands, and then the realization later down the road that he saw what he saw. And he firmly believes that he got a glimpse into the future, decades into the future. There are a lot of stories like this, and I tell people, it's not even the told stories that I'm interested in. It's the untold stories. If time slips are real, do you know how many things this could have an impact on? Let's talk cryptids, you guys. The Beringer of Australia. If those of you who don't know who the Beringer is basically a smaller T-Rex looking dinosaur. It has been claimed to be seen with feathers on it. This is before, by the way, there was a consensus on whether or not dinosaurs had feathers. People have been reporting this large feathered dinosaur out there for quite a while that just randomly appears in the Australian outback. What if this isn't a cryptid, you guys? What if this is an actual dinosaur who has hit or gone through a time slip and ended up here? There are quite a few dinosaur cryptids, you guys, and I'm not saying that they're all time slips or any of them are from time slips, but what if? Wouldn't it be a more logical explanation that if there was a time slip that people can go through, a dinosaur could surely have the same thing happen? And there's dinosaur cryptids all over the world that have been cited, from the Loch Ness Monster, the Beringer, the freaking Mokele Mbembe in Africa. Looks like a giant brontosaurus that lives in the middle of the swamplands out there. People have run into these creatures. But are they running into creatures that are here briefly from a different time? If we could be transported to a different time like that without even knowing, and all of a sudden everything around us is different, what would stop them from doing it and coming here for brief moments, hours, days, weeks, or even years? It brings up the same thing about Sasquatch. Now, that's not necessarily the theory I believe in Sasquatch, but there are people who believe that Sasquatches have come here from a time slip back from the days when creatures like Gigantopithecus roamed the earth. Now, once again, I don't subscribe necessarily to that Bigfoot theory because I believe a lot of other things based on evidence I've seen over the years. But it is possible. And if you realize that time slips exist, you can't rule it out. What if some of the cryptids, some of the people, some of the ghost sightings, you guys, are time slips? There's a creepy story out of Gettysburg where a man and his family were out on the battlefield, walking around, paying their respects and just appreciating the history of the Gettysburg battlefield. Out of nowhere, a man in a Confederate uniform runs up to this family. He's got dirt on his face. He's got realistic looking period clothes and rifle. And he appears to be even injured in a few places. He's got minor cuts and bruises and all over him. And he runs up asking this family for directions to somewhere they didn't know where he was talking about. Some kind of an encampment. The family trouble just keeps telling him, man, we don't know. We don't know where you're talking about. We don't know what encampment you're talking about. And this man runs off into the woods. Now, they didn't say anything weird about his appearance. He wasn't see-through. He wasn't transparent in any way. And it didn't feel to them like they had just seen something paranormal like a ghost. Although there are ghosts reported almost daily at Gettysburg, guys. There's a chance this wasn't a ghost. What if this soldier was time-slipped to the future, to where we are now? The implications of this are enormous. They go across every field, because if time exists on all three dimensions, past, present, and future, all at once, then anything is possible. Time travel to any point, past, present, future, it doesn't matter, is possible at that point. We just have to figure out the whys and the hows and the how-tos. Now, I realize that's harder, that's much easier said than it's done. But it means that it's a theory that is theoretically possible. And these are not just my theories, you guys. People who are the smartest men in our world throughout history have had these same thoughts. Einstein, great Russian scientists, Roman theologians and scientists have had these ideas. These ideas are not new. And we're quickly learning in our world that just because modern science says so, or a modern history book says so, doesn't necessarily mean it's fact. If those of you, I'm going to do a show on it at some other point, but those of you who haven't been keeping up with the news, look at what they just discovered about the pyramids at Giza. A vast city complex underneath it, with giant columns underneath it as well. There's a lot of things in this world that we don't know, that we like to pretend as a culture that we do, because we want to give that appearance of remaining in control, and knowledge is power. Time slips are so interesting to me, because I can't imagine walking down my street and then all of a sudden being 100 years ago on that same street. But you find more and more instances of it as time goes on. We've got pictures, guys. The guy on the famous bridge photo, it's a historical photo. This guy's got what appears to be almost Oakley-like sunglasses, a hooded sweatshirt that's unzipped in the front, and a screen-printed t-shirt, in a photo in a year that was decades and decades and decades before screen printing was even a thing on clothing. People dismiss it. Oh, well, maybe it's not screen printed. Maybe you're just not seeing it correctly. Maybe it's just a trick of the camera angle. The guy was out of place. It wasn't just his shirt. And anyone who tries to use that, well, it's not a screen printed shirt, maybe it was sewn through it or whatever. You guys, if you've ever seen this photo, you know what I'm talking about. This man has black Oakley-like sunglasses on. He's got a hairstyle that fits 1,000 times more now with this hairstyles that are in our world now, as opposed to what men wore their hair like back then. This man looks out of place from head to toe in this photo. There's also been many, many photos of people who have technology in times that technology shouldn't have been there. There are photos of people holding things that look like modern day iPhones or cell phones, in photos from the 30s and the 20s and even before that. Look at the Egyptian pyramids. There's a hieroglyph on the Egyptian pyramids of a helicopter. And I've seen the symbol that they try to explain this. Guys, there's a symbol they try to say that this is supposed to be, but when they draw you, if you look at the actual symbol and then you look at this helicopter hieroglyph, it is very apparent that this is a helicopter and not the glyph that they're telling you it is. They're trying to give you, once again, half-baked excuses to dull down and knock down your curiosity and knock down your questioning of things that are going on around you. This is how our world works. We can't tell you what's at the bottom of our own oceans, but we're going to tell you things about time travel or things about outer space or things about other planets that we should believe and take seriously. You don't know the animals that are on our own planet. We find new species on this planet daily. Insects, birds, monkeys. The world's smallest primate wasn't found that long ago, you guys. I mean, there are literally discoveries every day being made, but these people who make these discoveries are the same ones who say, oh no, we know everything, we've discovered everything. Well, if you've discovered everything, how come all these weird stuff keeps popping up? How come all these new species keep popping up? How come people are still having experiences of time slips where they end up hundreds of years sometimes in the past, or 50 years in the past, or months in the past? There was time slip people who claimed to have seen the 9/11 towers already gone, the Twin Towers gone before it happened. People who have had time slips in New York recall seeing the Twin Towers not being there. And then after 9/11, they weren't. Time slips happen. We don't know what causes them. It could just be a thin spot. It could be, like I said, the Bermuda Triangle. There are many instances of things going missing in the Bermuda Triangle and odd relics and antiques being seen around the Bermuda Triangle. And there are points like this all over the earth, guys, where I don't care what you want to call it, the veil, the laws of physics, whatever, it's thinner there. Think of it as a thin membrane, okay? It's practically see-through at certain points and at certain times in the right places. And with very little or no effort, you could end up in one of these. And these are the questions, you guys, that I like to ask, that get me going and get me thinking and get me asking questions that get me out of the really good schools. People don't like it when you critical think on your own, then ask questions about things that people would consider to be, an obscure type of thought pattern. I ask these questions because I don't think of it as an obscure thought pattern. I think of this as a logical thing. If there are people claiming that they have jumped through history, don't you think we should establish a little bit more of an intel on that? Our own government has admitted to doing experiments in time travel, so why wouldn't we be interested in it? I think we are. And there are also cases, you guys, of time travelers who experience time slips who are never heard from or found again. These people vanished. There was a case of a guy in Chicago wearing period 1920s clothing. I mean, down to the hat he was wearing, the suspenders, the pants, the shirt, all of it. He looked like somebody right out of Newsy. He appeared suddenly in front of numerous witnesses in Chicago. He was standing in the middle of the street and he looked absolutely stunned. He just stood there looking around with a very blank, confused look on his face. Numerous people walked up to him and started trying to get his attention and get him out of the road and get him to safety. And they got him out of the road onto the sidewalk and they're talking to him and he's asking where these old buildings were that hadn't been around in a long time. He actually talked to police officers. Now, the way the story ends, there are a few different endings, you guys, I do not know which one is true. But one of the more disturbing ways that this story ends is after he is done at the police station, he simply vanishes. The address he gave police that he said was his home was a vacant dirt lot. And had been for many, many, many years. The other theory says that the man made it out of the police station before he ever left the police station. The other theory says he was in the interrogation room when the police left him there momentarily to step outside, and they came back in and the man was just gone. Either way, it's a little eerie that things like this do happen more often than not, and they're barely reported on. They are reported in newspapers. You can look up old articles on things like these, but they're buried, usually on like page 22 underneath the ads for, motor oil. A lot of these time slips, you guys, are very interesting, and people have seen various things. Like I said, past, present, and future. There have been a lot of people who have been debunked as hoaxes, though. You always got to have your BS meter on for people who are just trying to pull your chain. And sadly, because of the technological age we live in, it's getting easier and easier to do that. But I tell people, on cases where you can't get concrete data, you have to trust your intuition, your internal compass on what is right, what is wrong, and what is BS. It's how I work through everything I do, because not everything I read or look up or watch about these subjects, you guys, mesh. A lot of these are very frictiony. They don't go together. A lot of these theories do not go together. But you can pick and choose which ones that you believe in and that you believe have the ring of truth to them. And to me, time slips have been happening for so long and been reported in so many places that there's got to be something to it. These people aren't suffering from a mass psychosis. And a lot of these people share details, like I said, that were either historically correct and they don't have a reason to know that they were correct about these minor details, or they've reported seeing things that haven't even happened yet and later become true. What is you guys' opinion on this? Do you think that these people are genuinely being transported through time instantaneously for however brief of trip it is, be it minutes, hours, weeks, or days? Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Anyways, I hope you guys had fun. I like this topic a lot, and I'll get into it again, I'm sure. But for now, this has been Straight Jacket White Rabbit. I appreciate you guys for watching.